In today's tutorial, we will be working on page 2. So starting with the build for the page, I have my base page. I'm going to set to the side. Now this will be a pretty easy build just based on the way the page is going to be designed. First, I have 2 pieces. They measure 4 7/8 by 7.5. On the 4 7/8 inch side of the first piece, we are going to score this at 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch. On the second piece, we're going to score this on the left hand side at 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch, again on the 4 7/8 inch side. Then I have 6 pieces. These measure 4 1/4 by 6 inches. On my 6-inch side, I am going to score all of these pieces at 1/2 inch. Once all of my pieces are scored, I'm going to take my 2 larger flaps first. Now I'm going to miter these, but I'm only going to miter the 1/2 inch section. I'm not coming to the 5/8 inch line. I'm coming to the 1/2 inch section and scoring my piece. So just pretending like that 5/8 inch score line isn't there for right now, and scoring or cutting these pieces just like we normally would. And then for all 6 of these flaps, I'm going to do the same thing and miter all of the ends on my 1/2 inch tabs. Then I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to score on all of these lines, including on my 5/8 inch line. So I'll score the 5/8 inch and 1/2 inch score lines on these pieces. I'm going to start with my centering ruler and mark the center of my page here, and then I'm just going to draw a line right down the center of my page. This is going to make it easier for me when I'm placing my flaps on my page. I'm going to use that to line up the flaps because there's going to be a small section where it's actually smaller than the page itself. So I'm just going to take one of my flaps first, or my larger of my 2 flaps, and I'm only putting my adhesive on that 1/2 inch tab section. So again, I'm ignoring that 5/8 inch score line, pretending like it's not even there. Once the adhesive is on this piece, you want to actually fold so that that 1/8 inch section is like this. So you don't want it to be flat, or these pieces will not be in the correct position when they're on. I actually made that mistake and started to put the piece on and remembered, so I was able to move it off. Now with that 1/8 inch little gusset, now I'm going to go ahead and place this piece here on my page. So when that gusset, let me get this on the page first and then I'll show you. Once that flap is on there and I have my 1/8 inch gusset in the right position on the flap, now my flap is in the center of my page. And I need to do the same thing with this second side. So this is going to be like a gatefold. So we want these to line up in the center. We don't want them to overlap, and we don't want there to be too big of a gap. So once again, we want that 1/8 inch gusset to be in the right position. We want to put this flap in the correct position, and we're going to set this one down right next to it. Making sure that the gusset is correct. And if you wanted to measure over from the edge of the page, it's 1/8 of an inch. So if you would prefer to do it that way, it might be a little easier for you if you're new to doing this, or if you're just not sure. Once I have that burnished down and I fold that gusset in correctly, you'll see that we have just that little teeny tiny gap so that there's not an overlap, but the pieces are going to meet in the center. Now we're going to open up both of our flaps. And here's where I'm going to be placing my waterfall flaps. I'm going to be placing 3 on each of these flaps here, and you want to make sure that these pieces fit between that score line and the edge of the page. If it's into the score line at all, you need to make sure that you go back and trim your pieces so that they don't hang out of your flap. And they can't go into the score line or it will not fold correctly. And that's the reason we have the gusset. So we're gonna have a lot of paper on these flaps. So I have my first waterfall flap, I've got my adhesive on it, and I'm going to just line it up with the top edge of the page and then making sure that my side is lined up with the side of the page. And then I'll burnish this down. And then taking my second waterfall flap, I'm going to apply my adhesive here to my 1/2 inch tab. And then I am going to place that score line right at the bottom edge of that 1/2 inch tab from the first flap. I'm going to line it up, and then I'm going to line up this side edge and burnish this down. Then I'll take my third waterfall flap, applying my adhesive again to that 1/2 inch tab section. And just like on the previous piece, we're going to line up the score line with that 1/2 inch tab on the flap right above, making sure that that right edge is lined up with the edge of the larger flap, and then burnishing this down. Now, if you really wanted to, you could add more flaps here. I think 3 on each side is plenty, but you could theoretically add another one and possibly another one below that. But I'm going to leave 3 here. And then I'm going to take my other 3 and I'm going to repeat that same exact process on this left-hand flap. So starting with my first flap, applying the adhesive to that 1/2 inch tab, lining up the tab with the top and the left edge, and then burnishing this down. With my second flap, I'm going to apply my adhesive and then line up that score line with the 1/2 inch tab on the waterfall flap already on the page, lining up my left hand side and burnishing this down. And then for my final flap, applying my adhesive here and placing it just below that second waterfall flap and making sure the left edge is straight. So now I have my waterfall flap. All that paper will tuck into that little, the little 1/8 inch gusset section. I'm gonna come back and rework this one because mine is actually sticking over a little bit. So I'm going to recrease that a little bit. Maybe that'll help. Okay. Okay, so now you'll see I don't have anything hanging over. So if yours are hanging over at all, you want to go ahead and trim those. You can use scissors, you can use a craft knife if you need to, but mine are looking good, so I'm good to go. So next we're going to come in here and start adding our decorative papers. This is the 8x8 paper that I'm going to be using for the front. I did cut off 3/4 of an inch off the top, then I split this in half to 4-inch pieces. They're going to go here, but first I'm going to apply a closure. Now from my 12x12 paper that looks like this, I have cut this Morning in Provence oval, and I'm going to be placing this here in the center of my page as a closure. I'm going to be placing the magnet over here. You can place it on either side, but I'll be placing mine here. So I've got my magnet that I'm going to place down right about here. So you'll see when you put it on the page, it's there. Then I have this leftover piece. It was from the cut aparts. I just took a small piece of it, and we're going to cover this. So I'm going to just apply my adhesive to the back of my piece here. And make sure that this is adhered down, and then I will cut this out. And it doesn't have to back the whole entire piece over here, because this is going to be attached to this side and you will not see it. So I just need to have this cover my magnet. So now from the front side, I'm just going to cut right along that oval. Just like that. And now I'm going to attach my second magnet. I'm going to come in here and place this paper on the left-hand tab, because this piece is going to go down. There's not a magnet that needs to go behind it, so it's safe for me to place this one down, and then it'll be easier for me to place my other piece. So once this goes on the front, I want to make sure there's a uniform border all the way around it. And now I'm going to take this piece. For right now, I'm just going to set this piece here on the front, because I want to make sure that where I put this, it looks okay. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit lower than center, actually, so that it's not covering those pickets on the fence. And I'm going to put it right there. So I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to hold this in place while I get the backing off of my magnet. And then I'll press that down and lift this off. And now I can take my adhesive and apply it to the back on the left hand side. I'm going to reattach my magnet, and then I'm going to press this down. I'm going to open it up this way, just to make sure that I didn't have any adhesive where it shouldn't be, and I was good with that. So we've got that. And now I can go ahead and open this and place this piece here on this flap. Now I'm starting with this 12x12 paper here that we've already cut a piece from for page 1. I've cut 2 strips that measured 4 inches by 12 inches. Then I've cut these two. I have 4 pieces here that measure 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. I'm going to take these pieces. I'm going to place one on the front of the third flap, and one on the front of the second flap. I'm going to do the same thing over here. One is going to go on the front of the third flap, and one is going to go on the front of the second flap. So I'm going to apply those, and then I have cut from this strip here, I have cut these apart. I trimmed off that white border. Taking this middle card out, I'm going to be using these two cards. So I did trim them down to 4 inches. So I trimmed a little bit off of each side. And these are going to go here in the center. And then I'm going to be cutting 4 pieces. I haven't cut them yet, so these are not the right size, but I'm going to be cutting 4 pieces from these to 4 inches by 7/8 of an inch. So when I have these pieces, they will go here and here, above and below those cards. I need to cut 2 more from here for here and here. I'll apply all of these papers on, then we'll go ahead and work on the inside. Once all of those flaps are decorated, I'm going to flip all of them up and we're going to focus on these. We're going to be cutting 6 pieces, all from the same paper. This is the 12 by 12 paper. I've cut 2 strips that measured 12 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and then I've cut them into 4-inch pieces. So I do have this piece here left over from the top of the page that I might use here in just a minute. I'm not sure yet, so I'm going to leave it like that. So I've got my pieces, 4 inches by 5 1/4. I have 6 of them. I'm going to place one on each of these inside flaps here and here. And then I'll come back and decide what I'm going to put in between those flaps and down here. I'm going to be cutting 4 pieces for inside of here. I've taken the leftover piece I already had of the wood grain paper from the Fussy cutting sheet that we've already cut from. I had a strip of it. So I've cut 4 pieces. They measure 4 inches by 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to be placing these pieces in between the first and second and the second and third waterfall flaps here and on this side. From that leftover strip that I had from this 12 by 12 paper, I have cut to 4 1/4 inches. Then I've just cut this into 4 pieces that measure 3/8 of an inch. Then from the 8 by 8 paper that looks like this, I've taken these 4 smaller rectangular pieces, and I'm going to be placing these on the fronts of these flaps. Now I like to place my pictures on the back side, and I like to have decorative paper on the front side. If you want to place photos on both the front and the back sides, you don't have to do this step, but you can also do this and place your photos underneath of it. So what I'm going to do is place this here about 7/8 of an inch up from the edge. I'm going to place this strip here. Now, if you are going to be placing a photo on here and you want this just to be decorative, you're only going to adhere the ends of your piece so the photo will slide underneath of it. Now, I am not going to be doing that because I am not going to be placing photos on the front of this flap. Like I said, I like to see the decorative papers. So I am going to just adhere my entire piece down to the front of the flap. And then I'm going to take one of my little cards and I'm going to adhere this whole piece down. Now, if you are placing your photos on this part of the page, then you are only going to place your adhesive here instead of the whole entire back side like I did. I'm going to use my centering ruler so that I get this in the center of my flap. And then I'm going to adhere this right there. And then when this is closed, you will not be able to see that piece. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this flap and then both of the fronts of the flaps here using the remaining pieces. Next, I've taken this 12 by 12 paper here, and I have cut two pieces. They measure 4 inches by 4 1/4. I'm going to place one here and one here. Then I have 2 pieces of my cardstock, and these measure 4 1/4 by 2 1/4. I'm going to be placing adhesive on the sides and the bottom edge, and I'm going to place this right at the bottom of the page, making a pocket out of both of these. Then from my Fussy cutting sheet, I've cut 2 pieces that measure 4 inches by 2 inches for the front of my pockets here. From this 12 by 12 paper, I did cut these 2 cards, and I'm going to leave them blank like this so that you can use them for journaling or a photo mat if you prefer. Placing these here in those pockets and closing those waterfall flaps. Now for the center, you have a piece of 12 by 12 paper. It looks like this. It's not cut. There's another piece that goes down the side that has a butterfly on it, but I've trimmed this just underneath that frame. There's a grayish frame on the page, and I cut this to 8 3/8. I cut this all the way across the page first though. So this is 8 3/8, and then I trimmed this off the top, so this is 7 1/4. I'm going to be placing this right here in the center of the page, and then one photo or 2 smaller photos can go here. You could place a photo here, but you still have that pretty image on the page. Once this is on, I'm going to leave my page like this. I might come back in and add some embellishment here in another video. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and close those flaps, and that holds my page closed. So you'll see now those 1/8 inch gussets make those pages lay flat because there is quite a bit of bulk due to the waterfall features. So this tutorial is complete. Like I said, we may add some additional embellishments later on. If you're just joining the tutorial series, don't forget to check out the links in the description box below to the Scrap and Create website, as well as my Etsy shop where you can pick up all the supplies that you need to follow along. I'll see you in the next tutorial.